The word Afrofuturism was coined in '93 and set down in print in '94. But the concept of Afrofuturism predates the 1994 naming by a century and a half. There are some that say the original Afrofuturistic, at least aspiration, could be ascribed to Phillis Wheatley.
Phillis Wheatley was brought to this country enslaved, and at a very young age became this literary master. And some of her poetry actually referring to being brought to the Americas.
However, the first absolutely full-fledged Afrofuturist is Martin R. Delany. His work, Blake, written from 1859 to 1861, published in serial form, is the first work of alternative history by an African American, and probably by an American, period.
When you read Blake, he is staging a fictional revolt. Now you're open up to a different possibility of how enslaved Africans thought about the future. If you're revolting, you think you're gonna win. You're not revolting out of the sense of I'm going to fail. So I'm thinking about my future, and a future that's not necessarily inscribed in the reality of a slave society. They had to think about not only what we're gonna do now, but also what we're gonna do next after we win. And that's the same across the entire African diaspora. Sometimes even in our Hollywood imaginations of what Black resistance was, it becomes tit for tat. Revolt becomes an act of vengeance. That's not the frame that Black people were using. Black people are trying to get you out of the way to recreate their lives. Because slavery was a disruption.
Martin Delany's abolitionist advocacy also led him towards a more extreme view, which is this country is never going to accept us. This country is founded on a rotten foundation of racism. This country is a vicious, evil, wicked empire. Therefore, Martin Delany advocates for, let's leave. The imagination, historically and presently, is very important, especially for groups of people who need things to be other than what they are.
Afrofuturism is a scientific understanding of how we survived the transatlantic slave trade and how we are still actualizing our vision.
What does the future look like for African Americans? What does the future look like in relation to the long history of racism in this country and the occurrences of violence?
We have always had to dream because the political possibilities for our liberation don't exist.
You can't get to self-actualization until you're able to carve your own path and create your own blueprint. Afrofuturism has been that.
It was a word that gave a placeholder to generations of the ways that people have worked.